It is life, but it is right now feels like a whole lot of pain and tears and even blood. Yeah, I don't want. Oh, you got the baby to. You a little visual sermon illustration here. So,
I just wondered. I love my job. I get to teach a lot of freshmen and sophomores in college. But for them, some of them, the idea of beating guns into gardening tools is very foreign. And so I get a lot of pushback when I might suggest that Christians might be really invested in making peace in the world. So I just wondered, what are your strategies, your rhetorical strategies? I teach writing, so how do you connect with people when that's the first time maybe they've ever thought about that idea, or the first time that they've thought of owning a weapon as not being faithful to Christ? Does that make sense?
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up with guns, which is another thing that, allows me to have a reasonable conversation with folks. I grew up with hunting with my grandfather and very comfortable with guns. And then I moved to Philadelphia and I saw the casualties of our just addiction to guns, our fetish with guns, and this proliferation of weapons. And almost every one of our street corners, we have a memorial to who died there in the collective memory. I lived there 20 years, so I can tell you the stories on almost every corner of our neighborhood. And I say that to say, I think a lot of times when we get into these issues, whether it's guns or the death penalty or immigration, our biggest problem is not a compassion problem, it's a proximity problem. That it's a relationship disconnect. We're good at talking about issues, but not as good at getting to know the people who were affected by them. So at the end of the day, the work that Word Made Flesh is doing, the work that we're doing is relational work, right? And that's why we've got to center the stories of people who have been impacted with almost everything I do. I mean, when we're transforming weapons, as people are beating on the guns, they tell their stories, With the work I do on the death penalty, the most powerful events I've done are with people that have been directly impacted. My friend Derek Jameson, who was on death row for 20 years for a crime he had nothing to do with, had multiple execution dates, saw dozens of his friends executed, was traumatized by that. So you hear his story from him is the best, right? But I think the more that we can get people close to the pain, and that's exactly what Jesus models for us, right? Born, a brown-skinned Palestinian Jewish refugee, enters into the pain, dies on the cross, is that movement towards the pain is gospel gravity, right? That's what pulls us there. So I think that, I don't know many people that have been argued into thinking differently, right? But I know a lot of people that have been storied in, and I know a lot of people, even more people, that have been a relationship has changed the way that they think about immigration or the death penalty. And so that's why the relationships, nothing can replace that, And I mean, we can still talk facts and theology and, all that stuff. I think that's important. But I also think that the thing that really oftentimes our heart moves our head rather than someone hearing you argue a Bible verse and like, wow, I've never thought of that. I'm against guns now. And think about the things that have changed your mind, right? They're probably something deeper than just reading a position paper, right? So yeah. But thanks for doing it. And we need to have these conversations. I think we need to think about the lives that have been crushed by gun violence, by police violence. I mean, Breonna Taylor, that's what part of what's happened with the Black Lives Matter movement is they've made racism personal. Right? And it has names and faces. Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, like Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery.